my name is Tom Dixon. I'm the founder and host of the Financial Experts Network webinar series, and I'm delighted to share what I've learned about student loans from two experts in the field, one being Mark Kantrowitz, who's considered by many to be a giant in the field of college financial aid, and the other being Joe Messinger, who's a tremendous college financial planner who's been helping families for over 10 years make smarter decisions about how to pay for college. Now, if you like this video, feel free to click on that like button, and equally important, feel free to subscribe to our channel, as we will be posting highlights of really important topics on our channel from time to time. And you can also, of course, not only subscribe, but click on that bell if you'd like notice of additional videos as we post them. So with that, I hope you enjoy the session. Feel free, of course, to not only like it, but also to make a comment. We will do our best to respond to any questions or comments you have. So with that, here we go. So let's jump into it. Again, focused on two questions. How much should you borrow? I think the first question, when you think about that, is to perhaps frame it a different way, which is how much is reasonable debt? In other words, your total student loans over 4 years, hopefully, how much, if that amount, whatever that amount is, what's a reasonable amount for that? So I would encourage you to think about two things. One, how much do you truly need each and every year before you agree for any loan amount? And then two, and this is a Mark Kantrowitz tip, and I've heard it from others, the salary that you expect to earn the first year out of college, whatever that amount may be, say it's $60,000, then ideally you don't want to take out more in total than $60,000 in student loan debt. So there's a rule of thumb. I encourage you to really think about it. Now, of course, when it comes to calculating how much you need in loans, if you're going through this for the first time, if you're going to be a freshman or your child is going to be a freshman next fall, then what you're going to see is, or if you have a sophomore or junior, you may be familiar with this, but anyway, the bottom line is the formula is the cost of attendance for any college or university includes tuition, room and board, fees, etc. From that, they assume that you as a family or as a student will make what they call an expected family contribution. Basically, that's what they think you can afford to pay based on your income and your assets. If that doesn't equal the cost of attendance, then that leaves the amount of need. And that need, in terms of how you really can pay for the difference, you have four types of what's called financial aid, but it's not all truly aid. Of those four types, grants, work study, scholarships, and loans, really the grants and scholarships are the only two that don't need to be repaid. Now, not everybody qualifies for that. I think we sort of know that. So that largely leaves you with working or loans. And again, many people take on loans. Now, again, this is just a recap of that expected family contribution. That amount is based on your income and your assets. It's a formula driven by the government. Now, when you think about loans, and before you start down the path of choosing a major, again, if you're in your first year, even if you're midway through college, I think it's wise to be mindful of, geez, what would you expect to earn once you obtain that degree, which is a great thing. I think having a good sense of what your earnings potential would be for any major is a wise move. So here's one of a few sites that I've had recommended by people like Larry Kotlikoff, for example, who really goes through this in his new book, Money Magic. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has a lot of great information that really across pretty much any career, you can see what your earnings potential is going to be. So I'll post this in the description field. I encourage you, please, to take a look at this so you really have a handle on that, because you really want to make sure you understand how much money you'll have to work with once you graduate to repay any loans. Now, another site that I just learned of through Joe Messinger actually will give you similar data. This site, Educate to Career, is actually one that's backed by Google. So it really is a very credible source. And in fact, Joe, in his firm, they have a very neat college aid pro program, collegeaidpro.com. The data that's used to project any future earnings for any career in their program comes from Educate to Career. So again, they really help you look at the return on investment for any potential career. So really want you to look at that earnings potential. Also highly recommend that you take the time to look at what your future payments might be, your loan payments. You would do that with any other loan. We need to be doing that as well with college loans. And what I'm going to show you now is courtesy of a calculator that can be found at savingforcollege.com. Again, I'll post that in the description, and I'll show you an example of what future loan payments might look like. And I'm going to do it. Here's really a summary of what the college board puts this together, of what the cost would be for the 4 different types of colleges, the 4-year programs. Of course, looking at the Ivy League, now those numbers are as of 2019, but I think they're fairly similar still today. But I updated the cost for the private nonprofit, the public 4-year out-of-state, and the public 4-year in-state numbers are all from the college board. So for the 4-year in-state at $27,330, we multiply that by 4, we have over $109,000. So for this purpose, to just give you a sense of what I think you should be looking at, which is taking an eye towards what your future payments might be for any loans that you take on, I'm assuming that the public 4-year in-state cost would be over $109,000. And what I do here is I break it down into 2 loans. One, and this is to emphasize that I believe, and people like, more importantly, Mark and Joe Messenger, who are experts in this field, all advise that you should maximize as much as you can through federal student loans, not private loans, federal student loans. So not loans through SoFi and all the other Discover and the banks. You really want to take the most that you can through federal student loans. Now, over 4 years, there's a cap as to how much a student can take. And by the way, if you are wealthy or you're not wealthy, you still have the ability to take these federal student loans. But I want you to understand as well that, again, if you take $27,000, which is the cap or the aggregate limit as it's known, over 4 years, that if you repay that over a 10-year period based on today's interest rate, I'm assuming 3.73, you're going to have a payment for 10 years of $272.79. Now, the difference between that and the $109,000 plus that you'd owe for that 4-year period is over $82,000. Now, here, if we assume that your parents take out the loan for that amount, which you can with a federal parent plus loan or a direct plus loan, you can borrow up to the cost of the attendance, so you can make up that gap for your student. But again, you're doing so at a cost. You want to be very careful as you think about these, because again, this is going to be your responsibility as a parent. Now, if you look at that amount again, $82,320, paying that back over a 10-year period, you're looking at $966 plus. That can be a significant number for a lot of people. Now, again, Parent Plus loans can certainly, they have a time and place, but I just want you to be mindful of, again, how much you're taking on in terms of debt. Now, the other part that I really wanted to address, the question of federal or private student loans. Again, if you look at experts like Mark, he will tell you that the least to most expensive loans over the life of the loan, which factors in all the costs, your least expensive, number one, would be the federal Stafford loans. These are the loans that the students can take. They might be subsidized, they might be unsubsidized. They are your best place to start. Next would be that Parent Plus loan that I just touched on. Again, if we're thinking about least to most expensive, then home equity, that certainly could be a viable option for you. But if you notice, private education or private student loans are fourth, just ahead of credit cards, which absolutely should be your last resort. So again, here's an expert there. And here's part of why they say it. Here's some of the big reasons why Mark and others will recommend that you really optimize all you can through federal student loans. Everything from there's no credit check required, no cosigner needed on the federal student loans. Stafford student loans can have lower interest rates than private student loans. Private student loans can really work if you have a tremendous credit score and you're a great credit list to the private student loan lenders. It's really a small segment is what they do or who they try to serve. But most importantly, you have protection and you have flexibility with federal student loans. You have things such as deferment or forbearance. So imagine that you get out of college, you work a year or two, and unfortunately, you might change careers or you might get laid off or something happens. With federal student loans, you have more of the flexibility in terms of putting a pause in your payment on your payment plan. You're not going to have that flexibility with a private student loan. You have the ability to really pick and choose from a wider range of repayment plans to include ones that are based on how much you're earning. So imagine being able to pay back a loan based on how much you earn. The only type of loan that you really can do that with is a federal student loan. That's a big plus to this. And then, of course, if you work in public service, be it for the government, be it for the nonprofit, be it in the military, you could actually get a lot of your loan forgiven after a 10-year period. It's called Public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF. So to my mind, and again, more importantly, to those of the experts in the field, there's a lot to like about federal student loans. Here's a grid that Mark put together that really compares side by side some of the characteristics. I will share this in a blog post and put it on my website at financialexpertsnetwork.com. I want you to have this material. I'll share these slides as well. But one thing to know is as well, especially if you're going into this the first time, you really need to complete that FAFSA form. Again, whether you might not qualify for financial aid, but if you're going to use a federal student loan, which I highly, highly recommend, you will need to complete that FAFSA form. And frankly, you should just do it anyway because you never know when your circumstances will change. So I encourage you to go to the FAFSA website, fsa.ed.gov. Again, I'll post that in the description. Make sure you have that. And again, I'll post a summary, and here's a little more detail on the direct subsidized, the unsubsidized, and again, the differences between them, who qualifies. And then with the Parent Plus, otherwise known as the Direct Plus loans, I'll include that in the materials that we put on the blog as well. And then here, last but not least, here's a summary of how much you can borrow each year with the federal, again, as an undergraduate, the federal direct loans, otherwise known as Stafford loans. One tip from someone like a Joe Messinger would be to err on the side of taking all you can in the early years. You can always take less later in your college career, but if you forego taking some money early on your first year, your freshman or sophomore year, and you find, geez, I need extra money, it's use it or lose it in terms of those caps year by year. So I certainly encourage you, if you need additional information, you're welcome to visit our website, look at some of the past webinars that we've had with experts like Mark, like Joe. But in addition to that, I encourage you to visit the website, the federal website, studentaid.gov. They've got a lot of great unbiased information there, and I certainly hope you take advantage of that. So if you liked today's session, I encourage you to, again, click the like button. Feel free to click on any or add any comments. Happy to try to respond to those. And then I'll let you know that I will do another video on how to choose a private student loan if, in fact, you're going down that path. Again, that to me should be your third or fourth alternative. But if you do, I want to make sure you're informed on that. So again, look for a video on that. And with that, I want to thank you for listening.